Hey everybody, welcome to episode 4 of the Rugby Analysis Deep Dive. In this series, I speak to coaches, analysts and players, and we look at specific areas of the game. In this episode, I'm joined by Lewis Ludlow from Gloucester Rugby, where I can look specifically at the lift and the jump in the lineout. Enjoy. Lewis, thank you very much for coming on to episode 4 of the Rugby Analysis Deep Dive. Really pleased of your topic area. It's one that I know a lot of people find really interesting. So if you don't mind, just quickly introduce yourself and then tell us a little bit about your topic area.
Yeah, I'm Lewis Ludlow. I've currently played for Gloucester Rugby and I've been there since I was 17. Gone through the academy, up through to the first team and recently made 100 appearances last season. The topic we're going to discuss is sort of how a line-out jump in attack and defence can affect speed of ball, how the play goes and that type of thing.
Yeah, and I'm really pleased that you've chosen that as a topic, and I know that there's a lot of people that really want detail when it comes down to set piece in particular, and the line out is something that you're very passionate about, which is great. Probably just draw a little bit on your the fact that you've come through the Gloucester ranks, and that's something that you'll have seen a lot of change in that time. It'd be really nice kind of during the chat to pick up on some of the learning that you've gained along the way, and maybe some of the perceptions that have changed as well. So let's get into it. Cool. So, Lewis, you got your first clip, Gloucester against Quins. Just tell us what you see. We watch it through, and then we can break it down from there.
Yeah. So this is one of our exit lineouts. As you can see, we walk in, trying to go with a bit of tempo. Quick ball to the front, and you can see the two boys, two lifters, both go beyond the jumper to try and set that Maul up. We're trying to give Cal the best platform that he can. This line-out's all done on speed. As soon as Franco puts his arms up, he's the one that sets it off. Great ball from Toddy at the front there. Luckily, we've got no contest, so the boys are able to get around, set a decent Maul up. That plus one jump straight in, Jake straight in, and hopefully gives us a good platform to kick off. Mm-hmm.
So just pick up a little bit on your cues, Lewis. So you're walking in. What are your cues and your triggers now to know when to go up and when the throws come in?
So I'm head down. I'll be just waiting for Franco's one. As soon as he says the one, his trigger is set it off, and as soon as he starts to go, that's my cue to just turn and jump there.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And then from your lifters, what's giving you confidence that your lifters are in place and you can time your jump?
The thing for me is that the lucky thing we try and do is I'm going to jump and it's their job to try and catch me up. Mm-hmm. The jumper's got to set the speed, especially on that front ball, because we don't know they're not going to contest there. So my aim is to get there as quickly as possible, mm-hmm. And then Franco and Fraser do a great job there, catch up, and both set beyond it to try and get that more set for Cal's platform.
Yeah. So in terms of where you're going from this, so you've gone up. Where are you hoping to land in relation to your teammates?
I'm hoping to land outside the line. So our aim as lifters there is they'll be trying to get me on their outside hit. I'm trying to get the ball back to Jake as quickly as possible because you don't know whose hand's coming through there from Quinn's point of view, and mm-hmm. The ball's the key at the end of the day. And then it'll be up to Hans and Freddie at the back here to just stop that. We always know they're going to try and hit from the back, as you can see there, that second row going towards the touch line. So Hans does a great job there of blocking him out and creating that platform that we need. Yeah, so this one, as we spoke about, is going to be a terrible little fake here, coming with my head to try and put Tom Wood off. And then it's all about the speed across the ground to get behind him. We'd previewed this game knowing that he was going to challenge big at the front. Luckily, he actually loses his jumper at the back there. I think it's Moon is more interested in hitting the Maul that I think he knows we're going to set up. Great ball again from Franco. That's a tough ball for them boys to throw that back foot ball. And as you can see, Craigie on his back lift there, he's gone sort of perfect technique with a lift, arms fully locked out. He's on his tiptoes, and we're trying to get that platform to exit again. The speed across the ground is the main thing here, which when going backwards is always quite difficult, especially for me. Mm-hmm. And like we spoke about it, because he loses his lifter, probably kind of panics a little bit, turns around, and then Tom Wood gives the penalty for in at the side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you just probably pick up a little bit on your dummy at the front. You're doing yourself down a little bit with the quality of your dummy, but it's what did you see before that you were trying to work on?
So I'm trying to hold it, on all the previous games. He'd tried to go up with that front jumper and contest the front ball, which we'd actually been running as well. I think, to be honest, sometimes it's more trying to put off the prop. The props often look at the jumper, like for me, for example. So I think it's Painter there might be looking at me. If I go, he might try and lift Tom Wood, and if he's trying to lift Tom Wood whilst he's trying to pedal backwards, then they're not going to be able to get in the air as quickly as they can.
Yeah, it's really interesting what you're saying about the lifters there, because clearly we've actually had the buy-in there, haven't we? There's
yes, yeah.
Saying that he was already coming around potentially for the drive, so it's done its job. And when you look at success outcomes of a dummy, does it buy somebody, and it's done that, so you can be pretty pleased with that one.
Successful, to say the least.
Yeah, absolutely. And then obviously the extra penalty, so just pick out where that penalty's come in. So just talk me about the preview a little bit more there. In terms of where Tom Wood then goes in, had you anticipated that might be a strategy?
Yeah, so like I said in the previous clip, normally teams would try and sort of hit with where Courtney Laws and Moon end up hitting there and taking them all back towards the touchline. But I think Tom Wood possibly sees an opportunity there where Jamal's lifting, and I've almost fell back into the line a little bit just there. You sort of sit down a little bit, sitting on the toilet, we'd say, and he sees that little gap there, but he probably goes, some games he might even get away with that. But the ref sees it, that he's probably gone just a tad too early, got his arms in there, then affects the way I land on Moon's head here, affects the way that the ref sees it, and it's all that, that perception thing. Ref sees that they've gone early, taking me out in the air, and it's almost an easy penalty for the ref to give there.
Yeah, and it goes back to that's that point, isn't it? So he's already off balance in terms of where he's coming off the line, then going to react, and he's probably not looking so much about the timing as he's gone head down quite early.
He's going to hit that whatever happens, hoping that I just come down earlier, and it doesn't. And you just got to give him a little push on the way back just to his troubles.
Tick for your preview like that. So next clip, just tell us what you're saying.
Yeah, so this one, similar type of thing. Like I said, we knew that Tom Wood was gonna target me at the front. This one was to try and get him turned back, and then quickly send him back the other way. It's so hard when you're defending a line out to try and get back. If you can pause this one at the top of jump, we actually put this in our end of season review as in terms of lift quality and jump quality. Jamal and Craigie's lift there, like, I don't need blocks there. They're both below the knee, both let go, which is what we want. Franco Murray's thrown if they don't throw that, if they both don't throw me up there, and the ball's there, we're not catching that. That is really is top class drill from all around there, from all the boys. It was a move that we specifically put in for this game. Practiced it a lot in the week, but I'm not sure we ever ran it that well. Which you can't ask for better in a game really. There, they don't go up, but I think that's more down to the fact that the drill is so slick that they don't have time to go out really.
Yeah. So in terms of your focus areas there, so you've got a pretty accurate throw. In terms of the timing of it, who's going first, jumpers or throwers on this one?
So as Franco puts his hand up there, it will be my turn back to Craigie. So Craigie's the dummy. Franco will turn and try and attempt to lift Craigie as well. And then as I turn back, Jamal should set off then. He should leave a bit later. So as he walks for a little bit and then goes the last two steps, he sort of plays a bit disinterested and again trying to set up that Maul for Willie to get the platform off.
Yeah, I like that. So you're suggesting that body language wise, you're trying to sell a picture that there's no lift coming from there. And even Craig is pretty active in terms of his body language, calling you back as a potential.
Craigie's great at that. If you ask him he should probably be an actor, Craigie, to be fair, in some of these lineouts. But he does that well. Franco goes in and even gets hands on Craigie there. So if you look at the two main jumpers in Laws and Moon, they probably both think Craigie's going up there, and then it's just a quick turn from me and Jamal's speed to then Wood's not even been able to turn around. It's only only Moon seeing from behind that he has turned, and then they're all in poor positions to stop the Maul then.
Yeah, quality example. We'll probably pick up a little bit more on the left as we go through, in terms of the height that they're getting. Just talk to us about a little bit about the drive. You get into a good position in terms of your focus now as the person that's going up in the air. What type of things are you focusing on right now?
So I'll be trying to sort of steer this Maul. As we get through this hole here with Jamal, I'll be trying to drag my left shoulder around here now to square it back up, and you can sort of see me trying to sink back down. But yeah, almost trying to just drag that Maul through where you think the hole is and get as low as possible. Because if you're low, you've got your back to someone, you're the eyes for the boys in terms of you and the 9.
Cool, thank you. Tell us what you're seeing on this next one.
Yeah, so this one will be one of our get out options. It's not actually a call that we'd go in with normally. It's just one. Obviously, Franco's seen the 2 options that he's got are covered. So we've gone to our bailout, which everyone knows is normally, we'd normally try and drive off the front there. But due to how quick the ball was and the way that Worcester defended it, that we had to go into that. Franco broke off and went into the pick and go games, and Blob ends up scoring. But in terms of the lift, it's almost like so I'll be sat there in a preload, ready to go. I'm always that option for Franco. He obviously sees nobody covering it, and then that's the way. It's the easiest option to win there. You're 5 meters out, you want to win the easiest ball. Doesn't necessarily have to be the best for what the backs want or that type of thing, which is an argument we have all the time. We just want the ball back in our hands.
That's very interesting. So just talk to us a little bit more about that. So you've pre-Lineout, you maybe got some direction from your backline. So Cipriani tend to maybe give you a little bit of guidance as to what the backline want. How does that influence your decision making when you get to that Lineout?
Yeah, so usually Franco would go in with, or the Lineout caller would go in. So it gets to this point here, and he'd have 2 or 3 calls in his, like, we'll have gone into a huddle before. He'll have 2 calls, say one's Craigie rushing forward and one might be him straight up. He'll go into the line out, as you can see there. He's, Craigie's got Ted Hill opposite him. It could be a bit of a challenge there in the air. And Franco's got Kitchener covering himself and Maul at the back, who, Kitchener's one of the best line-out defenders in the league. So he's probably going to cut off both them options unless the throw is spot on. Whereas, we'll have a check out. Whereas a certain call for that week will be the front, which is me ready to go with Fraser and Ruin there. 2 big guys, hopefully set a decent platform to drive off, because that as soon as this ball's won here, Ruin's got to try and get his shoulders and hips across, because you've got the weight of 7 blokes going to hit you, and it's so hard for us to actually get that back build that we do there. Franco does what he normally does, puts his head exactly where it's going to hurt. Craigie will go on ball. Franco put his head on the outside there and manages to not get turned in fully. Manages to try and get that big split stance. If you see there from 5, gets his shoulder in, beats their man in, which is the key. And then Morgs and Val end up going on the outside. It does break up for some reason. I'm not entirely sure what we. So yeah, you see they take the head of that Maul straight off, and the gap opens up for Franco to end up calling through there. But ideally, the Franco shifted across behind Val here, but it's so hard to drive off that front 5 meters out, because Worcester's only thing there is that they're taking the head of that Maul off, going towards the touchline, and it's almost one of the easiest places to defend the front of the line out.
Yes, it's interesting when it comes to the kind of structure of a Maul, and indeed about any kind of attack in this area, that is often the slightly unanticipated outcomes that end up as being the best ones. Going for a call, in terms of where Worcester have numbered up, they've numbered up at the back. They maybe thinking about a middle as a kind of a optimal point to drive off, and the front of it not really being covered all that much. And to say Franco reacts really well to get in and hit the edge of it. Worcester have only got one intention in terms of spinning towards touch. How much do you plan for that?
That there is our back build setup. You'd normally, if you're driving in the middle, like I say, you'd go over, you'd have a wedge either side, a man on ball, and it'd be a nice even drive forward. But because Worcester are going to hit it from this angle, in theory they're only got to get it sort of 3 or 4 meters and they're in touch. you try and get that extra man on the outside here. Fraser's been taken out by their guy at the front there, so it kind of leaves me on my own. Franco's tried to do his job with the ball, and the gap's just opened up for him. And then through some sort of fortune, we end up a metre away from the line, and Big Blob manages to roll himself over.
Decent reaction to what was a fairly non-ideal scenario. We won't talk about your clear out technique in this one, Lewis. We'll refrain.
What's wrong with that? That's perfect.
We're going to refrain from that one. We want to talk about whether that's a
defeat
or not.
Video, that needs to be on rock clear out technique video. That is gold star.
Okay, so back into your Saints match. Just talk us through what you're seeing.
Yes, obviously we're 5 meters out, big attacking opportunity for us. This is a line-out that with Jamal at the front especially, it's a nice line-out for us because he's actually so fast. It's just a straight race with a prop there. But on this line-out, we actually go off the ball, which not a lot of teams do. We back the fact that I can jump early enough, Craigie can get a strong enough lift from behind, so there's no trigger for them to go off. We're only watching the ball. And then it's a similar sort of thing, really, talking to about that last Maul is, Craigie's got a massive job here with the fact that he knows I'm going to jump early. As soon as Franco moves his arms, I'm going to jump. And he's just got to stay so strong with regards to the Maul after it. And it's up to Jamal to just get on his bike, get there early. And Saints don't contest, we get a good lift. And then Franco's doing the same sort of job there. His one job is to hold Craigie in. Ruin's then trying to hold Franco in. And if Ruin and Franco actually stay on their feet here, we'd have such a good Maul to go off. But they almost do too good a job in spinning around, and they leave Hans sort of unprotected. If they'd have all stayed together, we'd have had that 3 at the front, which we want to then go forward. But those falling on the ground, leaving Hans sort of on his own, he stands up. Once they get shoulders under chest, it then turns into that Maul turnover.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just if we can just pick up a little bit on your left technique. So the timing is going off the thrower, which is a tough thing to react to in itself. Just talk to me about particularly Craigie behind as the back lift there.
In this particular line-out, Craigie will be hands-on, as you can see before, and he'll be watching my feet. So he'll know that because it's the front and you're going off the ball on the front, there's obviously a very short distance to get up. So he'll be hands-on, watching my feet, and then he'll try and get that left foot of his as he goes. If you slowly play it on, as it goes up, he'll try and get his left foot in across there on his tiptoes. His arms are locked out. His great lift from Craigie and Jamal again. And then he's trying to, same as we said before, he's trying to get me on his outside shoulder, and he's trying to put his left leg across and get his hip and Jamal's hip sort of as close together as they can as an arrow point. And he actually wins the race there from Moon, as you can see, gets his body around, gives me that protection. It's then from this point onwards that our Maul starts to have the issues that it did.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So yeah, I can see that. Stance going in. We can see the small step around in terms of finish position. So Jamal, particularly in the front, what are you looking for from your front lifter in terms of his finish position?
So we go with arm through the leg. He shows his left shoulder there, arm through my leg, and then his right shoulder should almost be around to Craigie, and they should be that sort of little arrowhead in front of me. I can't see that. Is that Tom Wood there? Yeah. I think Tom Wood must get in the gap there because that's how he gets around and gets his arms around me. He gets in between that gap of there. Yeah, just there. Jamal's almost ended up side on. You don't want to be fully side on. He needs to be arm through, left shoulder sort of on my body, and then facing north south.
Cool. So where Craigie is now, so in a pretty good position.
Yeah, I think, like I say, this side of the Maul actually goes really well with Craigie's finishing position and how Ruin gets there and Franco. It's then we almost end up going sort of too quickly with Ruin and Franco going there. If Ruin can stay square there rather than spin, the spin almost spins him into too much space. If Hans can stay onto his shorts there, stay square, and then we can all go from there. It's just this issue then causes Hans's chest to come up. As Hans's chest come up, Hayward just gets straight under him, and once your shoulder's under under chest like that, it's an easy drive for Hayward and those guys as they come through.
I'm interested with what Courtney Laws is up to on this at the front of the Maul, and how Franco maybe gets the floor. I think he may have played a part in that.
Yeah, he's seen Franco as he wins that race in a couple of mauls against him, and he's obviously seen that if he can get Franco out of there, which is the main pillar of our maul, there's then going to be a hole for somebody else to stick their head in, and he almost sacrifices himself because he ends up on the floor himself, spins Franco out, and gives him the gap there.
Yeah, cool. So slightly different scenario in this one against Irish. So what are you seeing in this one?
So this one is poor for me. I've gone up. The speed's probably quite good going up, but my legs aren't together. It's a bit of a star jump. The throw's sort of not as high as we'd want it. And as you can see, where the lineout started, rather than being sort of to the right of it and towards our side, I end up fully across and almost in London Irish's lineout, which gives them an easy way of just, comes down, slaps the ball out of my hands whilst we're midair, which is, poor ball security for me. Poor Varney's got no chance at 9 there, and luckily Boz manages to get the ball back at hooker, but it's more a thing of, if you don't get that concentration right, if you do end up, jumping across into somebody else's line, there's a metre gap there for a reason. It does give the attacking side an advantage. If you go across into their line, especially someone like Van der Merwe, he's going to take advantage of it all day long.
Just in terms of your setup, so the gap looks a little narrow. If you get into that situation when it is slightly narrow, how do you control this space? Because that gap is probably slightly tighter than you might otherwise see.
So normally we'd rely on our senior props or first choice props would set the big bookends and always get us on their outside shoulder. I don't know what time in the game this is. I think there's a few subs on. It's probably a bit later in the game. Boys are getting tired. We've got the young props on. That type of thing. It might almost just be like someone's just switched off. That hasn't quite got the mental thing right there. We haven't quite gone through the process correctly. And if a line-out's such a big thing in terms of process, everyone's got their job to do. If you don't do it, then that's the outcome that happens. A sloppy jump, sloppy lift ends up being what could have been a turnover for them. We get the ball back very fortunately, but then we're still struggling.
Yeah, cool. So process is definitely a thing that is probably coming out of a lot of what you're saying, that you're pretty confident with your processes, and when they're slightly off, it may be harder to judge, and this one probably leads into that one quite nicely. So what do you see on this one?
Yeah, so this is one of our shifts that we go to the front, and then the number 8 comes into lift at the back there. The main issue of this is how Fred goes up, and it's always a strange one. If you just pause it there, it's a strange one from where Morgs comes in. He's coming in at such an angle that he's got a big job in terms of squaring himself up to lift square, so that he doesn't actually push the jumper across the line. He almost comes in, as he steps in, he's got that twist already going towards him, but then it doesn't help with Fred, nicknamed the Noodle for a reason, goes up and sits in his deck chair, becomes all floppy. I think he might be skiing there or something. I'm not sure what he's doing. But you've got to go up. You've got to have a strong core when you go up there. As a jumper, it's your responsibility. When you're in the air, stay strong. It's a low ball as well. That affects the jumper massively. The fact that the ball's at his shoulder, he's got to adjust his hands. You practice all week going up, hands above your head. It's an easy position to be in terms of strength, hands above your head. As soon as you got to go down there, a little nudge from Bath, that it just makes everything all go wrong. And to be fair, he does well to hold onto the ball there. But it's a move that normally works really well for us and works well for a lot of teams in terms of that +1 coming in. It's just got to be executed right, and timing's got to be executed right, because Morgs can't actually go until the ball's thrown. But how well referees ref that is questionable.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting you pick up that we've got Moggs coming in the back. So Ben Morgan coming in as the +1. So currently a 5-man line extra player coming into the back, but then he can't actually move legally until the ball is now in flight. So now the ball's in flight, he's now able to come in and just foot position. So just talk to me what you would be your preference in terms of his picture right now.
Well, as you see, sort of Ed's feet square onto Fred, whereas Morgs has almost got that split stance where he has to come in and turn. You'd rather him be fully in, turned, ready to go, so he can get a nice square. He does actually turn. He's in a nice position there, but he almost goes past Freddie. If you can see, Ed ends up being this side of him. Freddie ends up being that side of him, which almost causes Freddie to turn in the air. Whereas you'd want them both square on, ideally, for a nice square lift.
Yeah, and it's and as you said, the twist effect that's had. I'll let you call your teammates the noodle. I won't delve into those ones. So just the twisting force. So got a square force in front, hands on the lifted blocks as you expect to see, aim with the drive above his head. But then because Ben Morgan is coming around and twisting, as well as the throws, you say, being slightly lower than you would like, and you have to adapt in jump, then causing hips to twist. And then it's really hard then to maintain balance. And even when Ben Morgan tries to get round, he's actually not bound on anybody. So what would you be hoping? So backlift there, as soon as he knows that his jumper is relatively stable coming down to the ground, what would you expect his next action to be?
So normally on a full line out, you'd want him to be hand through the leg again, shoulder on sort of hip. When it's a 5-man line out, it's slightly different. You might almost want him to be sort of hip to hip with a real tight. You might almost have a bind around Freddie, sort of all the way to Ed. We're facing that north-south again. He ends up in a nicely north-south position there with Freddie, but his hips are so far away from Fred's that it gives Stookie and that prop an easy way to spin him around, get through, and then luckily Fred holds onto the ball and we do end up playing away, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool. Nice breakdown on that one. So just in terms of context, before we look at the clip, in terms of what you're thinking of pre-line out, based on where you are on the field, what type of things are you considering in the context of this one?
So the fact that it's it's a 5-man line out, most teams would expect you to go to defend a 5-man line out with one pod, because obviously there's no such thing as 2 sets of 3 in a 5-man line out. Whereas we tried to develop this strategy. Me and Jamal and Fraser worked on it a lot, where I can go on my own and jump on a single lift, so that we can compete with Franco at the back against Laws, and Craigie would only ever go up there if they went straight up in the middle, whereas I get to go up on my own there. Mm-hmm. And we actually, that's probably one of our best ones in terms of height. It's just a great throw from Hayward. He's done his perfect job there. He's got it over the front man. It helps to got Courtney Laws to throw it to. But in terms of our process, it's worked exactly how we want it to. I'm a lot shorter than Courtney Laws, but I've almost the same height as him there with just a single lift from Jamal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so pick up on the context. So 5-man line, you can't have 2 full lifting pods, and generally when you talk with 5-man lines, you talk with the fact that your opposition will only have 1 pod to compete against you. But you've solved that problem. Just talk to us about your process and what you're going through here, Lewis, to get that kind of height.
I know that Franco's obviously called a 5-man single, so there's a strong chance that unless they go straight up in the middle, I'm going up on my own with Jamal at the front. And in order to do that, I've got to get my feet as close to Jamal as possible there, as you can see, and almost jump ever so slightly over his head, like sort of onto him, in order for the props of. We tried a lot of different techniques, but they almost want to feel as though they're under you, and then I always try and give a little push off the shoulders, and then it's just maximum jump from me, and I know I've got to keep my legs and core. It's important on a double man jump, on a double man lift, but it is so important on a single man lift, because if you don't go up there with any kind of rigidity, you're just flopping down. They can't lift you. It looks messy, and trust me, there's plenty of training clips of other boys trying to do it, me doing it at the start where I'm hitting the deck. The props end up getting kicked in the face. It doesn't look pretty when it goes wrong. But when it goes like that, it looks amazing. And fair play. There's the strength from Jamal there. We actually got it to the point where he can almost hold it up there as well, which is great.
Mm-hmm. Cool. I think one of the points that really stands out for me there is you jumping towards Jamal's head, which obviously in terms of balance, you normally have a lifter behind who would be able to offer that force forwards, and then they counter each other. You don't have that in this example, so you're essentially providing the force forwards that your lifter would normally provide, to then allow your front lifter to feel relatively balanced. But you get in pretty good in terms of your own jump, Lewis. You're getting a decent amount of height just off your own jump alone. Just how important is that for your lifter, your drive and the force that you're getting there?
Yeah, so speaking to the props, when they do it, it's very hard for them to lift from sort of that static position if something's moving, and the more of a shoulder press or full sort of push press it is for them than a clean sort of type lift from the bottom, it's a lot easier to almost give someone a little shunt rather than to actually fully lift them. In an awkward position, you've only got blocks to lift on. That's one thing I make sure that my blocks are really quite prominent, so they've got a nice shelf to lift under. Because it actually, it's so key. We tried doing it, without lifters and that type of thing, just to see how it would work. And the lifters are such a key for a small part of like a preparation for a game. For me, is making sure my lifters are perfect, so that something like that can actually work out.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting point. I think there's a lot of second rows that can probably help there, and jumpers indeed that can help their lifters by being just well prepared and giving them something to lift off. Just pick up on your point, because I think it's a really important point. The difference now between if your jump was only a very small jump, your lifter right now has got to put force from this position, which is really, really tough. If your jump is more powerful and you get to a higher point, ideally, if you've got that kind of jump, that's even better. If you can get to that position, most lifters are going to manage to get you up. So that jump there, was that 20 kind of a foot or so off the ground, and that kind of distance is probably where your jumpers would be aiming.
And if you see Jamal's hands there, his hands are facing upwards, so he's always got to just lift upwards. Whereas if you go back a little bit down to the bottom, if he has to lift from there, his hands are almost going to push you backwards, which is what you see a lot of in the ones that don't work, where the jump's not very good. It might be a Monday after a game where you're a bit sore. They end up pushing your legs backwards and you end up toppling over their head. Whereas as it goes, the better the jump is, the more their hands can face, towards upwards, and they give you that force going up, which is what you need rather than backwards.
Yeah, really nice point, so I think that adds so much clarity to that situation. When I try and picture what that is like, being a scrum half who doesn't spend a great deal of his time lifting, it really helps my picture as to, even for kickoffs, do it, or at least try some one-man lifts from behind, albeit, but the force aspect is it's a similar kind of concept. You see jumpers being pushed forwards, and that's the way you're balancing the lift by putting body weight on your lifter. That makes loads of sense. So that's very, very useful indeed. Okay, so talk us through. So you're now into some more defensive type of pictures. In terms of what your focus points are here, so you're at the front of the line out, and indeed you've got your Franco at the back as the potential jumper, or Craigie potentially as a jumper as well.
Yeah, so it's a similar thing. We've called the 5-man single again. A bit different with this one is I'm in a preload. So we've started. There's no movement onto it. Me and Fraser are there to start with, and I've got one focus there, which is the hooker. I know that I've got a maximum. If I call Fraser with me, I might take a step backwards, but I'm going up on the hooker as soon as he goes. I'm going. I guess it's great lift from Fraser again. He stayed exactly on the 5 meter line, managed to get that push off of him, and that throw's got to be like the Hayward throw in order to get over that front guy if he can get that sort of height. Franco goes up at the back there, so we've got pressure on front and back. If it goes over me, Franco's got a good chance of what we've seen before, like, tapping the ball out of the guy's hands.
Yep.
But luckily, I managed to get my arm across and get the ball.
Cool. You got Frisbee mainly in front of you as your lifter. Just talk to me as you go through your lift. It's hard to see from the angle, but as you're going up into the air, you can then see his actions. What's he trying to achieve here?
So he's trying to get me across that gap into the line. As we said before, lineouts are never straight; they never throw it. And his massive thing is get as much power upwards as he can. You see his the wide stance there. His legs come together up onto his tiptoes and pushes me all the way across the line. Which is I think I actually end up falling way past their line when I get the ball, which is due to obviously that lift from Fraser. Yeah, so he's straight across.
Yeah, just as soon as I saw that clip, I was enjoying a lot his in-action adaptation. He's got real control of you. So if you take that back then into practice, what do your practice sessions look like? Because his and your time in there is clearly very well balanced. His confidence with you in the air to be able to shift and control your body is pretty top draw. Just talk about what your practice looks like.
I'd say it'd normally be the end of most line-out sessions. And we always do one in the warm-up before the game. Is just basically this: get into a preload, and we'll do one or two. Get that feeling, and there might be one where he says, "Oh, I didn't do very well there. You need to jump on top of me, or you need to take a step backwards rather than I might have gone too far the other way, jumped too far over." On this one, we noticed there was a bit of movement behind us, so I think you can see at the start of it, we almost take one step back, and if Fraser doesn't take that step back with me, then we end up having that separation, which the lift won't work because you've got to be so close on the lift. I've almost got to be over him, so we kind of move as one, but his head's facing down, so I'm always talking to him here. I might be, Fraser can win me, we're going back a step, or Fraser, just get ready, get there early, get ready, because we use it a lot of times when teams are trying to rush us into a line out. If we can get Fraser to the line out first and I can get there with him, then we know that we've at least got one option going in the air. It's a tough option to throw over at the front there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's a really good example of two players really in tune with each other. It's interesting that you're saying about a talk that you've got in between, and he's reacting to you. I mean, even that fine step backwards that he's responding to you, it demonstrates your practice is clearly working. How much of that would you do kind of away from ball? So you don't necessarily need to throw or do you? How do you practice that?
So majority of the time we do the single lift. There's no ball involved ever. We've actually used it in attack a couple of times, where we use it as a sort of a speed option if we need to. But because most of the time we're doing it in defence, all we need to do is practice the movement part of it, and the speed comes from when there's an opposition ball involved or that type of thing. We're not too fussed on how it can be anywhere, like, because Fraser doesn't like warming up too much, so he comes out literally 2 minutes before we do our team warm up. So he tends to come out, do his little scrum bit he does, and then one single lift, make sure it's all good, and then we're into it. No.
Okay, so back into your defensive scenario, so against Quins on this occasion. Similar kind of context in terms of numbers in the line and indeed the jump and lift options that you've got. So just talk us through what you're thinking here, Lewis.
Yeah, so here we haven't actually called a single. As you can see, Craigie's come with me down to the front, and you see Franco Murray has moved in there as a hooker. That's because sometimes we have the option where he would come in and lift Franco Mostert at the back. But ideally in this scenario, he stays out just in case they do a play off the back with Don Brandt. But he covers it, comes in, and then sees, once we spread back out, he then goes back to his position on the 15. We've set, me and Jamal end up going up anyway, but it's the work of Craigie here, who's the middle guy in that 5-man lineout's got a big role to play in watching and deciding which jumper to go to, that type of thing. Obviously originally he was with me. As we go back, Jamal's ready, down low for that front lift option, and then fair play, Craig reads the bounces, sees it going back. Franco goes up early, with a great lift from Val behind, and it allows Craigie to get that catch up and then get Franco up there for the steal, with me and Jamal going up at the front to put pressure off the hooker.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Just pick up on your on hooker in this one. So Moraes is coming in. Where would he come in? And indeed, what would be his trigger to come in and lift as the first one?
His trigger there is the fact that they've got a forward at 9, so they've got Alex Donbrandt at 9. We tend to try and mirror that, and because there's the option of Donbrandt coming in and lifting Rob Shaw like we saw us doing with Morgs earlier. Mm-hmm. I think once they spread, he knows that that's probably not going to be the option, so he then ends up going back onto his role at the 15. And he knows he's probably going to drive from that then. So he's got to worry about the breakout rather than lifting Franco.
Well, that's really, really useful. So pick up on that. So potential for a middle lift. There's a decent gap now. You could bring Donbrandt in to lift at the back. Obviously, Maul as the back lifter. They then spread, and at the point that they've spread, that's then become incredibly unlikely. In terms of body language, what are you looking for here as the front man? What's telling you as to where they could be going?
So I'm looking at Simmons there. Obviously, he turns the jump, does the dummy, and then to be fair, their prop there is he's got hands on dummy. He's gone straight through, and that they do the second dummy. Once he's dummied at the front, I know then I'm just watching hooker. I'm waiting for hooker to release the ball, mm-hmm. and just going on that. Most of the time, I'm just told to just get in the air on the hooker's throw to try and put some sort of pressure on him. Mm-hmm. If the hooker sees somebody in the air, it's got to be a little bit off-putting, I'd have thought.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's got to go over you first before you can get to there. Even that in itself can create a slightly different flight path on the ball. And then you got Alex Craig just behind you, who's you picked up as reading the play really, really well. And then his space in there, so he's potentially lifting you at this point. And then he's able to cover that kind of meter and a half or so.
He'll know that once we go into spread, he's no longer an option, and that it's between me and Franco, and he sees it's a nice read for him that the double bounce to the back is a nice read for that middle guy, because it's quite a long time, especially ball in flight, and no doubt he'll have Franco screaming his name there as well to turn and lift him. Mm-hmm. And he's got the big Georgian behind him as well, which is always going to give Franco a big lift.
Yeah, cool. And then just on technique wise, so he's reacted really well. He's then able to take his step, where he's then able to get it nice and square. So the ball's already in flight, jumper's already on his way up, and he just that little sink. So sinks his hips underneath him. How important is that, Lewis?
It's massively, because it then gets Franco going straight up again. It's what we spoke about in terms of he's not going to be pushing him back over Val. He enables him to get him straight up, and enables him to push his body across the line again to enable Franco to get his arm in between Rob Shaw's arm. They've probably gone over a metre across the full gap there. Mm-hmm. And it's great technique from Frege, big bloke Franco Mostert to get him up there. You're not going to do that with terrible lifting technique.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so just to probably elaborate slightly, that if he keeps his hips back there, the force ends up being a forwards force, so he ends up pushing into his backlifter, just getting his hips slightly underneath him, pushing through, and indeed even the jump itself just allows him to get that extra moment, because he's actually not got a full grip, ball's in flight, the jumps come in, and he's still not fully engaged into the lift. So the jump is incredibly important to get that right as well.
Yeah, and it gives him that step he gets into as well. It gives him, it's a nice to be able to step into a lift for that bit of extra power for Craigie. He almost gets to sort of run up into his lift, mm-hmm. which enables him to get Frank up there that little bit quicker as well, and obviously get his big hand across there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool. So this time against Sale, in a defensive situation again. So what kind of things are you reading right now? There's a little bit of movement at the front of the line out, which hookers are very partial to.
Yeah, so there's a lot of pointing going on here, because we wasn't sure whether Curry was in, Curry was out. He's not 2 and 2 there. He eventually, so Franco steps in, as we've seen before, trying to mirror him, then steps back out. this one here, we weren't too sure before the game as to whether or not they'd use the Dupree brother as a jumper, because they're both big lads. But in the option of this 5-man line out here with John and Ross behind him, Beaumont's probably struggling for options a bit. And one thing about, we kind of noticed that he quite likes to underthrow his balls. So again, we worked on this. This was the first game we worked on it. That was a single call which Ed's just reacted really well. They say they've tried doing that move that we saw us do against Saints earlier on with the 2-step back. But for some reason we actually haven't set right on the 5. Don't know whether that was planned or not. I'm going to say it was. And then again, going off the hooker, and this was the first steal we got with the single lift, which sort of rolled into how we went from it. But it's a great finish from Ed in terms of that step back that we see. One of the best line-out readers around, Ed. That he steps back and manages to get that square lift. And it's a big gap. Refs, because it was slow, the ref managed to set a big gap, which is why I've had to go across so far with the one hand, and luckily it stuck to the hand, to be fair, which I was quite glad with at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting the reaction again. So your front lifter, he's taking all his cues off you. Your force is immediately gone across. So rather than going maybe up as you traditionally would, the gap is quite large. So you've gone right across, and his reaction is really quick. And even that little bit of help you picked up on it with Ed Sitter behind, that he's already moving away. You're in the air, and just his little nudge has probably helped to just stabilise it slightly. So
if you see Jamal there, he actually takes a full step whilst I'm in the air, which helps massively. The fact that he does that and enables me to get that ball all the way across there, because it's a big gap and that's not straight.
Yeah, very nice, really nice movements. And we'll move into a slightly more pressure situation. So back onto your own 5-meter line. What are you thinking in terms of how much challenge you're willing to give your opposition in these kind of situations?
So this one, obviously, knowing Johnny really well, he kind of knew that he'd have a few calls up his sleeve here, and that there were going to be Exeter love driving in the middle of the line out in order to get that perfect drive that we spoke about. So Franco's called us to shift here. As you can see, if he goes in front of Fraser there, then it's my job to slide down and get close to Val, and we're marking front middle, which is that late step there. Johnny's already made his call at that point. And then this, it's a sloppy jump, sloppy lift, but sometimes it's just about getting your arm across there. Obviously the ball's not great, so it's worked in our favour. But it was quite a nice line out to read in terms of where Johnny's at. It's going to be around that middle area. So once the ball's thrown, my cues just sort of jump as well as I can. And with Franco going up, making it sloppy, the ball being there, making it sloppy, it works out well for us. But it's just that sort of reading the ball off the hooker here. I'm not jumping till the ball's thrown now, and then going up there in the middle.
Yeah. So just talk me a little bit about your read of this, Lewis. So the ball's hasn't left yet. At what point in that throw, it might be hard to imagine, but at what point in that throw would you say that you know that ball is coming in your space?
As soon as Christian takes a step back. So when Johnny goes through, but he goes sort of in rather than through. So you know that step back there in Kirsten takes is coming into that sort of area. He's either going to, I'm kind of taking a bit of a gamble, because if he does bounce, which we've spoken about as a team before, if he bounces there and they go back to the 15, then you've got a policy there where more, because you've just got to come in and try and sack it, because then it's 3-on-1 and probably 4, 5, 6-on-1 by the time they get their maul set up. So you take a bit of a gamble, which is why I'm a bit late going up in terms of the ball's already left. The ball's well into its flight path before I even think about getting off the ground, because you're worried about that bounce, which is why it's more of a steal from underneath rather than over the top.
I'm interested a little bit if you didn't get a hand to that, Lewis. Clearly your lifters right now, they're off balance, but they're actively getting you across the line. How much focus do you put on if if all else fails, you just getting in the way in there?
Yes, I think, mate. So I think, to be honest, if I don't get a hand to that, I'm probably giving away a penalty, which I'll be blaming the lifters for. But it's one of those that you've got to try and get your body across there, even if he catches that, and I can try and land in between him and Ewers, and just try and be a nuisance in that maul somewhere. The quicker you can, like we've seen on our mauls at the start, the more you can get your body in between, or just try and lift some shoulders up somewhere and be a nuisance in the middle of that. You stop Johnny, you stop the loose head going in there. Just try and make a nuisance of yourself, whether that's in the air or where you land.
Cool, great, thank you. Defensive scenario, so slightly different picture in terms of where the potential threats are. So what are you reading now, or what would you hope your teammates are reading in terms of where the threats are?
So this was completely off the cuff. We know that James Phillips isn't one of their go-to line options. Obviously, he's normally more of a lifter in terms of building their maul. So Ed had covered Bryn Evans and the two brothers at the back there, which in this normal lineup throughout the game they'd gone to, but they had obviously called their checkout at the front to JP, and it was actually Fraser said midway through the lineup, he was like, "Let's just come and jump on me," and luckily we went through with it, because I think we end up having this in a scrum and then we win the game. But it was more a reaction thing from Fraser saying, "Look, I think they're going to lift here. Just come and jump on me. There's no point us competing anywhere else."
Just in terms of the picture that you're painting, Lewis, how much, when you come to your review, how much work are you doing to look at how often opposition and go into the front, or go into where you look like you've got it might not be a lift, or might be an ineffective one-man lift? Are teams more inclined to go for those spaces if you paint that picture for them?
Yeah, so we got to the point towards the end of the year where teams were actually actively talking about our single lift, to each other and to us after the games, and saying that, we knew they were going to do that here, and which is why in the end we started trying to mirror it and only use it in certain parts of the game, certain parts of the pitch. This one here, we just tried to paint the picture that we weren't going to lift at the front at all, because we weren't planning on lifting at the front at all, until we seen those three there line up. And it was like, say, Fraser said, why don't you try and jump here? It was never going to be a massive lift for those two guys trying to lift up James Phillips. So the speed, we actually managed to beat them for speed there on their own ball when they know it's coming. Which I was just watching the hooker after that. And ideally, I'd like to, keep hold of that, especially by our line. But it was one of those that I managed to, we're not quite, looking at the lifts we've seen previously that were later on in the season, they're a lot better. I'm a lot closer to the tight heads. Everything's a lot smoother. Whereas this is sort of, I jump back a little bit, Fraser pushes back a little bit. We end up getting a big gap between us. We don't quite get the height we want, but luckily enough for us, we managed to get a hand in there to get the ball going back to our side. So this one it was the end of the game. We needed the ball back to win. And Frank and Mostert just off the cuff said, "We're going with Luds, we're going to go with you. We're just going to back you, see if they go on the ball." So as soon as they went to that three at the front with Falatau, he then pushes me and basically says go. And I just go and jump. Didn't wait for ball, could have gone early if they wouldn't have thrown it. It was purely an instinct thing of, I say to Knight here, just be ready. And he's like, yeah, I'll lift you. And then it works, because the speed of Franco as well, pushing me across there. They're obviously always going to Falatau there, because the way he's looking back at Stookie for the call.
Yeah, I'm interested with Elliot Stook coming in. Another A-level pupil from the past. So as he comes into the line now, in your preview, how much looking at body language you do in your preview? So he's entering the line now. He's clearly signaled, gives the call when he comes in. How much are you reading of what his body language is and the other guys in your preview? So when you get there, you've got some knowledge of what's likely.
Yeah, so we'll always look at what all the callers do, and different callers, like a lot of different callers have different mannerisms, whether it can be the smallest things. Like there's a guy at Wasps who they have a trigger where he opens and closes his hands as he's walking in. and that's a trigger. It could be the fact that if everyone's looking at the ground, it's going to be a call off the sound. If everyone's looking at the hooker, the hooker's going to set it off, and just little things like that. So we always know where to look as well. Stuckey is one of the worst actors in the world. So, you kind of can tell if he's trying to bluff you or he's trying to fake or something. The way that he walks forward, you know that he's not going to jump and he's not going to lift behind him. So it's almost that little giveaway that it's going to the front. And that gives us the chance to go up before Bailout, who's actually really hard to jump against in a normal line-out situation. He's one of the best I've jumped against in terms of the speed he has in like a 5-man line-out is devastating.
Yeah, and I like the fact this is really reactive, that there's no set plan coming in. Just pick up Franco Mustard here. So he's looking at Elliot Stuck, reading his body language, and the moment that he just knows he's not being lifted, his eyes turn, body language is gone. There's just no doubt in his mind that's going to the front. I think that's just incredibly astute, reading the body language and just really decisive action to get across on a decent lift as well. Okay, so into a few of my clips just to finish up. I thought some of these were interesting for a few reasons. This one in particular, this is where coaches would often see a game from. And you think about when we film from different positions, this often is the angle that we're left with. If you compare to what we've seen, this gives us a very, very different picture in terms of our review. So I'm really interested in terms of seeing this for the first time properly, Lewis. So if you were kind of picking out things now from your opposition, so you're going to play Leinster next weekend. What type of things are you picking up there that could be maybe potential opportunities for you?
First of all, it's interesting that they're exiting with a 4-man line-out. They obviously want to reduce numbers. They're going to go with a speed option. I imagine they've got sort of the 3 options of either Fardy up there, the cooler up on a throw jump, which is what they go to, or a bounce. So he has that call there, go straight up. It's fairly obvious they're not going to drive because of what one's doing. If he was going to drive, he'd have been bound in already. And Scott Fardy, you'd like to think, would be a lot lower in his lift. But it's good speed in terms of the jump. But for me, looking at that as a defensive line-out guy, the throw's not top of jump. If you can, we'd go in there, no, we're going to lift the bloke at the front and just go off the hooker. I think that there's potential for a steal there.
Cool. So you see the Ospreys in this one, once they know that the threat is going behind, they then turn. You thinking about getting up there, Lewis, and putting some pressure on?
Is that Adam Beard there in the head guard?
Yes,
I don't think there's any need for him to turn around. He's a tall enough man that if he gets a max lift there with 3 and the second row behind him, that's a hard bloke to get over, especially with that throw there. He probably steals that. There's not necessarily that they've tried to mirror it when they're not going to do anything too complicated 5 meters from their line. A mirror is probably not the best option.
Cool. Thank you. Good thoughts. And then into a slightly different one now. The Ospreys throwing in again. You got this slightly awkward angle in terms of observation and being able to see fully. But what type of things are you noticing about the Ospreys process and how Leinster have dealt with it?
I think the speed of everything is probably it looks a bit slower than what you're thinking. I think what we said about Scott Fardy here in the head guard for Leinster, he looks straight towards the hooker once the movement starts. So he knows he's going to go off the hooker. He sees that guy coming forward. He knows everything's going forward. And the back lifter for the Ospreys guy there almost misses the beat. I don't know whether he slips on the ground or he gets quite disconnected. And that probably doesn't help in terms of their speed of jump, etc. And gives him the chance to get across and get his arm in there.
Yeah, it's a really good spot, Lewis. So back lifter, currently not quite in position. So I think misses the cue slightly. Just ends up body way backwards slightly. Chases in, and the fact that you spotted Fardy's eyes. So you now know that he's focusing on hooker. You're playing them next weekend. How are you gonna outfox Fardy and create some issues for his ability to read this?
Well, if he's going to watch hooker, then you're almost going to try and do sort of spot jumps, because if he's watching hooker, he can only jump where he is. You're not really going to move too well with it. So whether that's we'd probably try and call away from him if he's going to watch hooker. If he's jumping there, Franco was always the master. If he never saw anyone opposite him straight away, he'd just walk in and call on himself with a little nod. It'd be straight up. Or then try and move around. Try and move around a bit to try and take his eyes off the hooker. Try and interest him in something to do with the movement. But he's such a good international player, that sort of thing. He's probably not going to get too distracted by a movement. He's going to keep his job and just try and call out of his zone, basically, because if he's watching hooker, he tends to stay in his zone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool. So just in terms of the lift itself, so break back down to the kind of lift quality and some of the technique we talked about so far, getting pretty good height in there. Just talk me what you're seeing, Lewis.
Yeah, I think it's a decent lift as they get up to there, but it's sort of then it starts off well, then goes a bit sloppy. The ball's sort of across the line, Tom has to reach for it, and if you look at like Stu will always back himself as he's a massive human anyway, so he doesn't necessarily have to win the body height battle. So he's just going to drop his shoulder there, drop his ass into it. That he's sort of going to sit there. He's going to win that battle anyway. He knows he probably knows it's a play where Sam's not going to be in there for too long, so he's only got to win a second or two, stop any interruptions into Sam, which he does. And the work of 1 and 8 there as well to just repel that hit to allow Sam that time to take sort of a step sideways and backwards to get the ball to Chudley, and Sam's not touched at all there. They've put a real good wall against him. I think it's McNally again there, gets his head down, wins that race, so they can't turn Stuke, and then 8 and 1 just lock him in to almost give him that wall, give Sam that wall so that he can pass straight out.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, real nice breakdown of that. I'm interested by the back blocking that we're seeing a strategy that is very much just stopping players from getting through. Fair to say that if this was a traditional Maul, Lewis, that we wouldn't be seeing this quite the same setup.
There's no way they wouldn't be that wide. You'd probably see Josh bound on a bit more to Stuke, and then 8 a bit further back, and then 1 could almost be where 8 is, because Sam would be staying in there and trying to go forwards rather than taking the step backwards and to the side. Whereas if he was doing that, if 8 was any further back, he'd then step into him. So that's why he's got to be up there in line with the back lifter and the back support in order to get the ball out and not throw it into him or get in the way.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So yeah, the adaptation is very much in relation to the play. Right, last clip, Lewis. We've got Sale against Saints. So again, a clip that you haven't seen a great deal of. I'm interested in what you see, what you pick out from either team.
As we spoke about before with Sale, they tend to use Phillips if it's going to be a Maul in any kind of aspect. So the fact they've gone to him, they want the strong base. The line-out isn't straight to start with, but they do a great job as lifters of getting him out the line and getting that head of the Maul set. So it's very hard for Saints to attack it in terms of that. He gets nowhere near on the line-out. Then there it's all about their transition from here. So ideally you want the second row across the line and into there where he almost goes around it. They don't really hit that low, and Sale have got their back lifter in and the wedge in as well. The guy's bound onto Bryn Evans' shorts. He's got his head down. He's gone over Curry so that Curry can slip back to get the ball back, and then Hooker's coming in to create the length. And then, like you said before, that they've got that Maul going there. It's set. Wilgriff John's going to turn out here. Saints have got no option from where Moon and Laws have got themselves. That is, Faf's going to talk himself a little penalty there because JP Doyle's there, and he sees an option. It's an easy option. Then once Laws does that, Faf's away, and then you're in trouble.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So your process at the start. So you've got a decent lift, but a guy that maybe doesn't go up as often as others. So when he comes down, what's the benefits of having maybe somebody like that coming down as you jump, Lewis?
As he's got the second row, the Fijian guy opposite him. He does nudge him on the way down, but JP doesn't move at all. If that's me going up there and he lands against me, my legs are probably going out a bit there. I might be a bit unbalanced. But the fact he's got another second row and a big prop lifting him as well, gives them a really nice platform as a base. They don't go backwards at all, but they're always going forwards. And then the way their line-out is set up, they've actually managed to get, arguably the strongest guy on the pitch, the tight head, as their back wedge. So he then gives them that platform to drive around, and their Maul then goes around the Saints guys. Saints have got 4 guys in front of the Maul here, whereas Sale have got sort of 5 in a little cluster at the back. They end up shifting towards this way, and that's why Saints come up and around, end up spinning it around. So Moon's currently behind it here, comes right this way because Wilgriff John then becomes the arrow of the Maul there. Ludlam hits him well, but the damage is already done in terms of the penalty being caused because of how well set the Maul was in the first place.
Yeah, cool. It's interesting when you think about the attributes of players. So as a tight head in this situation, big strong player, you need your stability from there. He's gone head inside of the lifter, Lewis. Just talk us through the benefits of getting inside the lifter.
So the benefit of him being in there is as Bryn Evans gets tries to get spun around here, he's almost in that strong scrummaging position. It shows to me that they want to get that Maul going forward rather than shearing across. Some coaches would have the tight head on the outside there if they're worried about coming across in field, whereas they purely just want to get him in the strongest position, get both shoulders on a body part and get him pushing north south, which is what his job is, and what he's best at. So it shows that they're literally, their aim there is to get as tight as possible as a group of 5 and go forward as quickly and as efficiently as possible.
So in terms of drive force, Lewis, your front and your back lifters, how much drive force are you expecting from those guys based on the kind of stress they're under with the opposition driving in on them?
In all honesty, a lot of the Mauls, their job is just to stop the other guys from coming through. It's then an afterthought of can you get square and then drive forward. It's more the guys coming in, to the guy on the ball with the punch and then the wedge either side of him to get the ball rolling in terms of getting them all going forward, and then when it starts going forward as that lifter, as Bryn Evans is trying to do there, you can try rolling out, getting square, and then worrying about pushing and going forwards after you've got it tight and stop the opposition from coming through.
Lewis, thank you for that. That was incredibly insightful. You've definitely updated lots of my knowledge on the job, particularly the one man. Lots of that stuff has really stuck in my mind. Really interesting part of the game, and it's been really, really nice chatting to you and seeing the way that your lineup has evolved over time, and particularly just how reactive players are in there. That we often think about lineout as being just a kind of rigid thing that you're going to go through the exact thing every time, whereas clearly there's loads of adaptation and reactivity within there as well. So a nice balance between pre-planning action and being really reactive to what's going on, and really good understanding of each other as well, which obviously comes from spending a lot of time together. So thank you for your time, Lewis. Look forward to chatting again soon.
No worries, perfect. Thank you very much.